Hello there. What's going on, everybody? I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about something that's been kind of creeping out a little bit ever since Star Wars Resistance first showed up, and that's the new T-85 X-Wings. It has led to a lot of people talking about them. Do you think we're going to see more? Do you think they're going to make their way into X-Wing? I think it absolutely will. I think this a lot of the new stuff that they're going to bring into this game is going to make its way into a lot of the games that we play. But more specifically, people are asking, do you think the New Republic will be its own faction? Primarily for X-Wing, but I mean, or for other games as well. And I really don't think this is the case, but I want to address it for some people that maybe aren't that familiar with just how complex X-Wing has become lately and how much complexity that would add. So let's just start off by answering the question right away. I don't think the New Republic will become its own faction. I think if T-85s are more likely when T-85 X-Wings show up, that they're going to go into the Resistance just because of the fact that I think the Resistance is going to be a broad enough faction to cover all of the good guys, more or less, in the sequel trilogy timeline. That being said, I'm not going to say that that's absolutely the case. A lot of it is going to be up to what the future holds. And if Lucasfilm decides to really take the ball and run with it for the New Republic, being, having multiple new trilogies, dozens of new books about the New Republic and all of the stuff that goes on with the New Republic before their destruction at the Hosnian Prime system, well then sure, then maybe that will happen. However, considering the fact that Resistance just launched and is taking place only 6 months before the death of the New Republic, which is Starkiller Base blowing up the Hosnian Prime system and all of the New Republic, basically. I think that kind of tells us all we need to know about the New Republic's depth. It's not going to be that. I mean, there will be some backstories, I'm sure, that take place in between, New Republic timeline from their foundation until the Hosnian Prime system being destroyed. But if the Resistance is like the brand new thing that's gonna, like, that Disney's just released and it's taking place just before the end of the New Republic, we're not gonna see that much detail on the New Republic such to warrant them having their own faction. A faction's a big deal in a game like X-Wing, and X-Wing has just gone from, they've gone from 3 to 7, but I want to back it up just a little bit and talk about the history, because X-Wing used to only have 2 factions. It was just the Empire and the Rebels. And initially Boba Fett was in the Empire, and everybody was like, well, that means we're not going to get Scum. So when Scum came out around Wave 6 of X-Wing, that was its own faction. It was a huge deal. A lot of people couldn't believe it. A lot of people didn't think it was ever going to happen. And it presented some interesting concepts to X-Wing, because now all of a sudden waves had to change, because waves were, at the time was equal for both factions. Like, Rebels would get 2 ships, Empire would get 2 ships, and that was a wave. Rebels would get, Empire would get Imperial Aces, then Rebels would get Rebel Aces. There was a lot of symmetry, and it was really easy to balance a game when you only have to balance the left hand and the right hand. But you add a third hand into there, now you're an alien with 3 hands. No, seriously though, adding a third, you have a rock, scissors, paper mechanic that, ideally, I think that's what you strive for, that balance that very few games have been able to achieve, true 3-faction balance. Maybe StarCraft is probably one of the best examples of that, But now this game, and they went for like another 8 waves with only 3 factions, and there were problems, within that kind of led to the formation of X-Wing 2.0. So now as X-Wing 2.0 is coming out, one of the things they've done is they've simplified things a little bit by pulling the First Order and the Resistance out to make them their own factions. But those factions are struggling right now because, at least as far as complexity and depth, because there's so few. There's like 4 ships per faction right now, and there's not a whole lot of stuff that's even likely to come out for the First Order. Resistance has brought us a new TIE Interceptor, which is going to be great, and I'm sure we'll see a TIE Bomber variant at some point, but we really don't have a whole lot of ships to fill out those factions right now. There's a few things still that can show up for the Resistance, but not a whole lot for First Order right now. Now, Resistance as a show is probably going to flush a lot of those things out, but it's going to be a long time before we get the type of depth that the Empire and the Rebels and even Scum and Villainy have right now for those factions. So I think they actually need the help from things like the T-85 X-Wing. But also, you got to think about we also have Clone Wars factions coming, which means you're going to have the Separatists and the Republic. So 7 factions, man. 7 factions, folks. There's just, that's a lot to balance from a game that was based on only 2 and had most of its life with only 3. Jumping from 3 to 7 is more than double. It's so much more complexity. And while it did make perfect sense to have the Clone Wars factions, because look, if you were just keeping it good guys and bad guys, you'd actually have a pretty tough time trying to fit Clone Wars and factions in there, because it's a unique animal in that the Republic one day was the good guys, and then all of a sudden Order 66 happens, they're the Empire. The same dudes, like a lot of the same dudes are, they're like, oh, well, we're evil now? Okay, I didn't get the memo. I just know I work for Palpatine, So like it wouldn't have fit in the old style of X-Wing, but in this new way with multiple factions, it definitely works, and that's clearly the way to go. And that's why Clone Wars factions are coming to other games too, like Legion, and hopefully someday Armada, or even maybe newer games. If another tabletop game comes out someday, I hope they have multiple factions built in from the ground up. However, we don't need to get into micro factions with the New Republic, which is going to have very, very little kind of feeding its way into that. And I think if we're going to have an 8th faction, it's going to have to be something that's a drastic departure from anything else, something that can't be fit into anything else. Like, I think we are not going to see Jango Fett have his own faction. I think Jango Fett will probably be grouped in with the Separatists. Even though you could make a serious argument that he could belong in Scum and Villainy, I think a lot of your Scum and Villainy from the prequels are going to fit into one of the prequel factions, because of Scum and Villainy might end up then spanning all 3 timelines, and I think they could probably use the depth within the Clone Wars factions, plus they kind of fit into that a little bit more. Or maybe you could make the argument that they could show up in both. Like, you could make a young Hondo Anaka and an old Hondo Anaka, like one that's, in one faction, one that's in a different faction. We've seen that with Han Solo and Lando already. So, I mean, it stands to reason that could work for other characters as well. If, in theory, Boba Fett is confirmed to have crawled out of the Sarlacc in canon and ends up going to fight for the Resistance at some point, hypothetically, then you could make an argument for Resistance Boba Fett, so like characters can appear in multiple factions, but I don't think we're going to see just, this is, I don't think you're going to see the Zahn Consortium. I mean, you see Black Sun, for example, in Scum and Villainy. So there's a whole lot of faction talk that I think you can have. So which brings to the question, what would new factions be? Well, I mean, you could make an argument for like the Yuzan Vong, although granted, I don't think that they're going to show up in canon, not at least as they are. We have kind of seen hints towards those with some of the Thrawn books that have come out. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but there's like possibilities for an all-new faction. If you read the Timothy Zahn's new Thrawn books, there's definitely possibilities there. But it's still not definitive. And I don't know if it's flushed out enough to warrant new factions. It is also in theory possible that if they expand on the Old Republic, and we do end up getting like an Old Republic show, eventually, like Game of Thrones style Old Republic show, then that could warrant maybe 2 more factions. But even if that were to happen, and I think a lot of people would really dig that, even if that were to happen, I think that's not going to be for years. I think you've got to flush out 7 factions first and then consider adding, because like, dude, we don't even have the First Order and Resistance yet, and we don't even have proper previews of what the Clone Wars factions are going to look like yet. We've just got, some little, screenshots, some tiny little images of 2 of the ships. So we don't really even have a good idea on how those are going to play or how those are going to be yet. So to suggest that they start working on Old Republic or even more factions at this point is it's a little bit crazy. So I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. I think what's going to happen is I think this game is going to stay 7 factions for the immediate future. Maybe in 2 to 4 years, it might be a good time to consider more factions, but that really is going to depend on the health of the game, the balance of the factions, and just how strong of a pull whatever those new factions are. If becomes like a series of Old Republic movies or a new Old Republic TV series or some kind of major media draw to Old Republic, you could then make an argument for fitting Old Republic into its own faction, possibly. Although, depending on how far back they go, you might even see some Old Republic stuff get grouped in with the Republic. Because it's like, all right, you're going to have, you've got so many different republics, like maybe they'll just want to say, all right, look, the clones also have access to Old Republic stuff because we're not going back that far. I don't think a lot of people would, I think a lot of people would be upset with that if they did that, but anyway, that's all my speculation. Let me know what you think. How long do you think it'll be before we see new factions in X-Wing beyond the 7 that we have now? And I'm talking years here. Or do you think that it's just like they're going to just try and push it out as much as possible? And then 2, what do you think it would be if we did see any more? Do you think it would do you think the Yuuzhan Vong would work? Do you think the Chiss ascendancy, do you think that would justify it? Do you think Old Republic or something else altogether am I missing? Like, do you want something that fits into canon already, into one of the existing factions to have its own faction? Do you want the New Republic to be their own faction? Do you want the Hutts to be their own, Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to check out Crabbok.com. Hop in my Discord. Come in there and say hi as well. I want to big thank you to everybody on Patreon. You guys help make this all possible. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching. And have a great day.